gonna do? What you gonna do when they come for you? Bad boys, what you gonna do?
Welcome in, it's Petty Officer Romero with Job Corps. Today's subject, the crime scene. This is all part of our investigation learning module. Now, depending on what level of position you have, whether it's a police officer or if you're doing security, some of these steps really won't pertain to you if you're doing more entry-level things. Even if you're, let's say, a entry-level police officer, if you get called onto a highly sensitive crime scene, a murder, believe me, they're not going to want the guy that's been on the job for 18 months over there doing all the investigative stuff. But it's important to understand what all is going to happen and what part and what role you're going to take in all of this. So what we'll do is we'll start. There are generally 9 key steps to securing a crime scene. The first thing you want to establish is the crime scene dimensions. Okay, and what that obviously means is, you're not going to quarantine or block off 2 city blocks because there was a fist fight in the parking lot. Okay, so what you're going to want to do is make sure that you find the correct area. It might be 10 yards this way, 10 yards that way, and basically say, hey, this is where the crime scene is. Now, obviously, if it's more serious, you're talking about a murder or a car accident, you're going to want a bigger area. All right, so then let's move on to the next thing would be secure the perimeter. Now, secure the perimeter, what does that mean? Okay, you don't want a bunch of people walking through the crime scene. You generally speaking, you're going to, again, I maybe not want to take it too seriously, but let's say there was a gunshot. You don't want a bunch of people walking through and getting their footprints and their DNA and their anything that would contaminate the crime scene away from the individuals. You would like that crime scene to be specifically about the people who are involved. Now, that's generally going to be impossible, but the less traffic, the better. So if there were 10 people that walked through that area of the parking lot that day, there'll be footprints, there'll be cigarette butts, all these different things. Maybe somebody drops something out of their pocket, but you want to reduce that as much as possible. All right, so organize and communicate. Now, obviously, prior to collecting any evidence, you're going to want to make sure that you let your superiors know. You're going to want to make sure that everybody's notified that there's a crime scene, that you've secured it, and you're awaiting support. So, organize, get everybody out there that needs to. And now, again, a lot of times, all of this is not going to necessarily be your responsibility, but you have to communicate, let them know we got an issue, we have a crime scene, there was a person shot, a car accident, I secured the area, and we need support. And obviously, depending on each department's policies, how to go about doing that will be different everywhere you go. So you want to take an initial survey of the scene. I would say that unless you're an investigator, you're probably going to want to take a survey of the scene from a distance. You're not going to go walking through because you'll contaminate the scene just as much as anybody else. And if there's something I've seen and I bet you've seen this in TV shows, the first year, second year rookie that's only done traffic stops and all of a sudden is part of a murder scene and he's walking through trying to be a hero and show everybody he knows what he's doing. Well, he contaminates the scene, gets in trouble. So I would say stay as far away from the scene and the evidence as you possibly can so that you're not contaminating anything and don't get yourself in trouble. Now, processing the scene. Processing the scene is probably going to be left to the experts, the detectives, maybe CSI is involved, and the last thing you want to do is be touching anything. We already talked about contaminating the scene. You are not the person, assuming that you're a police officer or a security guard or even obviously in the military, and if you're military police or responsible, meaning you're on watch. So you were the person who was security for that day. you don't want to go traipsing through and looking for things and think that somehow you're going to be a hero, because believe me, it takes a lot of experience and expertise and training to get to the point where these people know exactly what they're looking for. And if you don't, you need to stay out of there. So let's move on. Preserving the records of evidence. Now, again, that's going to have something more to do with the police officers who actually process the crime scene. You're not going to be the person that's going to be in charge of the records and things like that. And again, we're assuming that you're not the investigator. I would doubt you'd be taking this class if you were looking to be an investigator or a detective or CSI. So let's assume that you're the police officer or the security or, again, military on watch. All right. So moving on from that, then you have the release of the crime scene. Now, again, this might be something that if you were on the scene, I could see that you would possibly want to release it to the detective or the higher up in charge that comes in and determines that they are in charge. They take over the crime scene, and you're pretty much going ahead and releasing responsibility. And really, again, as a police officer, military on watch, you're going to want to hand that over as soon as possible, because the longer that you are responsible for something that you really have no control over, that's just an experience thing. If you don't have control over it, you want to hand it to somebody who does, because you don't want to be held responsible for anything that could go wrong. The entire time that you are holding on and securing this, if all of a sudden a busload of tourists come through with their cameras and they don't speak English because they, a field trip from another country, and you're yelling stop, and they traipsing through and taking pictures, you're going to be held accountable for that. Why couldn't you control the scene? So the quicker you hand it off to the person who will be processing the scene, the better off you are. All right, that's all I have for this lecture. I'm Petty Officer Romero with Job Corps. Please come get involved. I want to see my students interacting on Blackboard. If you haven't yet, get in there, see what's going on. You can always contact me. I'm always available to talk. We'll see you at our next video.
Tell me what you gonna do, what you gonna do. Yeah, bad boys, what you gonna do, what you gonna do when they come for you. Bad boys, what you gonna do.